In 300 yards, turn right onto Farnham Road, A355.
Well, I suspect that by the end of August we shall be talking about this a lot more, and no doubt we'll get more and more people objecting to them. Thank you very much for listening. I'll be back next Saturday at 4. I'll be on LBC News, our sister station, tomorrow to Wednesday. Coming up at 10, it's David Lammy, but it's weekend breakfast now.
Turn right onto Farnham Road, A355.
15th of August, the Taliban have now taken control of every major city in Afghanistan other than the capital Kabul, following the fall of a key eastern city, Jalalabad, this morning. US President Biden has committed 5,000 troops. It's a continued effort to withdraw civilians and diplomats. As the West continues...
Continue on Farnham Road for half a mile.
...is withdrawing its ambassador. Have we given up on our responsibility to Afghanistan and its people? We'll talk about it later on. First, though, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has questioned how the Plymouth shooting had access to a firearms licence.
What were the background checks that were put in place? There's now a lot of stuff coming about the perpetrator. A lot of that would have been in existence beforehand.
Well, he has a point, doesn't he? Should the police keep tabs on the mental health of those with firearms licences? You would think they would at least have a look at somebody's online presence if they're about to have a gun.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
In 300 yards, turn left onto Bath Road, A4.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, the Taliban have seized the eastern city of Jalalabad, securing the roads connecting Afghanistan to Pakistan. It had been one of the last strongholds beside the capital Kabul to remain under government control. Tom Tugendhat is chair of the...
Take the next left onto Bath Road, A4.
...to end the NATO mission in Afghanistan is leading to disastrous consequences.
We haven't been involved in combat for a long, long time. We've been training
Continue on A4 for 1 mile.
for now 3 or 4 years, supplying logistics support, but not involved in combat. Meanwhile, the Afghan armed forces have been getting on with it while we've been supplying effectively the helicopters and the logistics. Now what we've done is we've pulled away the helicopters, we've pulled away the logistics, and we've told them to get on with it.
Arrangements are reportedly being made for the British ambassador to leave Kabul by tomorrow evening. At least 304 people have died and 1,800 are injured following a powerful earthquake in Haiti. The tremor struck about 150 kilometres west of the capital Port-au-Prince yesterday morning. Ministers have ordered a month-long state of emergency. Martin Boot, who runs a telecom firm in Haiti, says the relief effort is limited.
The rescue efforts in Haiti are very much the population themselves. The government has very little means. There's no army, or there's no real army with any equipment. The public works department has very little equipment as well. So typically what happens, because unfortunately this is now the 3rd time since I'm in Haiti that we have an earthquake, is people dig with their hands with shovels and spades and help each other out.
Special services are to take place in Plymouth this morning to remember the victims of this week's shooting. Jake Davison killed 5 people, including his mother and a 3-year-old girl, in Kia on Thursday evening. It's prompted calls for police to check the social media accounts of anyone applying for a firearms licence. All 16 and 17-year-olds in England are to be offered their first coronavirus vaccine dose, or an appointment for one over the next week. Kids hoped the teenagers will have developed some protection before the start of the new academic year. Team GB sprinter CJ Uja has denied wrongdoing after a positive anti-doping test. He tested positive for 2 banned substances after winning silver with the 4x100 men's relay team at the Tokyo Olympics. The 27-year-old says he's not a cheat and wouldn't knowingly take performance-enhancing drugs. The weather mostly dry with some sunny spells, showers affecting northern Scotland, and some patchy rain across Northern Ireland, Wales, and in northern and western England. A high of 23 Celsius. From Global's newsroom, I'm Thomas Watts.
Fixing a small wind farm to your roof is one change you could make to be more sustainable.
Fixing a broken chair instead of buying a new one is another change you could make to be more sustainable. One's hard, one's not so hard, but both help. Change a bit for good. IKEA, the wonderful everyday.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Andrew Castle.
It's 3 minutes past 7. Morning to you. Sunday morning, 15th of August. I hope you have a decent day ahead. Thanks for starting it here on LBC. We'll talk about Afghanistan after I look at the front pages. Around about 7:25 for our first look at that country. Kandahar falls. Kabul is not long behind. Did I really have calls yesterday describing the presence of the Taliban and a government control by the Taliban as kind of a good thing, an acceptable thing, an okay thing, particularly for girls, women, education, health? I did, didn't I? I really was surprised by that. So we will be talking about Afghanistan a little bit later on. We were sort of trying to engage in a conversation around the military presence, what happens next, has it been a failure? But actually, people were saying, well, the Taliban are okay. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. I've subsequently read several accounts of what it is to live under Taliban rule, and it sounds like an absolute horror story. No wonder people are leaving in their droves. We'll try and get to the bottom of what's happening in Afghanistan and what might happen a little bit later on. Meantime, we focus on Plymouth and the events of Thursday evening. A couple of angles to follow.
In 300 yards, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto Wellington Street, A4.
For instance, that is 80 or 90 quid to get a gun license for a start. I mean, we're talking about, you know, his means of delivering terror, the gunman. We're talking about holding a gun. But I think the more interesting, the more long-term, the more relevant for everybody going forward is not so much the gun license, is about where these people come from, how many there are, who they are, what their grievances are, and to try to understand what the hell is going on. Because if there's more like this bloke around, then that's a serious issue. But let's focus on the guns to begin with, and firearms licenses. Okay, so look, if you're going to get a gun license, it's going to cost you what, 80 or 90 pounds, and I guess there are different types of.
Exit the roundabout onto Wellington Street.
What about the medical check? How thorough it is?
Continue on A4 for 2 miles.
No online, look, no investigation of anybody's online activities in order to hold a firearm. I mean, you would think that that would come way up the list, wouldn't you? Is this bloke an absolute nutter? Yes, okay, we're not going to give him a gun. I mean, that's surely point one. Andy Redhead is with us to help us, former National Firearms Tactical Advisor who served in the Met Police and the Northumbria Police as well. Andy, hi there.
Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning. Well, I think we've spoken before about holding a gun. The gun used in this terrible tragedy was a pump-action shotgun. Legally, he held this or not? Do we think?
It depends. If it's full pump-action shotgun, then it's on a section of the Firearms Act. It's a prohibited weapon, and the answer is no. It would have been illegally held. But it's just picking up on where you're starting on there. I think that's interesting, and the point that the angle that you're coming at, I believe you're going to come up with your listeners this morning, Andrew, regarding background checks and the right to have a certificate, the right to hold that, the right to apply for it, the right then to possess a firearm is something that does need reviewing urgently. And quite how they go about that, of course, is the subject of debate, and I'm sure your listeners will have many views on that this morning. Yes.
You would think that one of the checks that should be carried out is the online presence and potential threat of somebody that wishes to hold a firearm. I mean, if we were starting from the beginning again when it comes to the right to hold a firearm, you would think a look at that would be the right thing, right?
I would agree. So when I joined the police service, which wasn't decades and decades ago, in terms of stuff, but everyone didn't have radios, we didn't have mobile phones, we didn't have the internet. I've been retired a few years now, and social media, for those that choose to use it, dominates. The thing is, if someone makes a comment or posts something on social media, it's there forever. And I would suggest that you're quite right, that is definitely something that needs to be reviewed, and then added on to and bolted to the existing checks, etc., for an individual who wants to apply for something like this.
I've had a text in already from Roger. He said he had this shooter had a shotgun certificate, not a firearms license, and he tells me to learn the difference. The police returned to him the weapon that he used. Is that right? I don't think we know that.
I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that. I would be speculating, Andrew, about the actual weapon used and all the rest of it. It'll come out in the wash in due time. People who legitimately hold either shotgun or firearms licenses for legitimate purposes, which is the vast majority of people, use them correctly, responsibly. Everything from retaining them, securing them, and the actual use and recording the use, etc. The vast majority of people are obviously now going to be concerned, and understandably, about any changes to legislation that might prevent them from lawfully having a firearm for whatever reason, legitimately, if there was sweeping or knee-jerk change because of this tragedy. And I'm not trying to belittle this tragedy in any way whatsoever, but the vast majority of people in this country who have certificates and licenses will naturally be concerned as to what will the government do that may remove their pleasure that they've had for years legitimately in holding a weapon. I understand that.
Yes, no, and look, I mean, the next thing you know, we've got somebody who shoots for sport and is an Olympic team member who can't hold a firearm, even though they're not going to do any damage with it whatsoever, and it's a means to sport or land and estate management. I completely understand that.
Yes.
In a quarter of a mile, at Langley roundabout, take the first exit onto the M4 slip road to M25, London.
Online and spouting the sort of nonsense and hate that they are, you'd have thought that'd have been a first check, I have to say. But listen,
Well, I agree with you, and I would suggest that social media content will certainly be looked at.
yeah, but it's not though, is it?
No, it's not at present.
Well,
And I agree with you, it should be. Absolutely it should be. But the police service, Andrew, like everything else when there's a tragedy, it's then a game of catch-up.
Yeah.
And trying to plug the loopholes or gaps, etc., to then satisfy the public. At the end of the day, the police service serve by consent. And play catch-up again to try and plug the next hole.
Exit the roundabout onto the slip road.
We want them, we want them getting ahead of the game, not falling behind. And you make some great points as ever, Andy Redhead. Thank you, former National Police.
In a quarter of a mile, merge onto M4.
Listen, let's be very frank about what we're dealing with here, because I want to talk to Joe Hemmings, a behavioural psychologist, about this. Where my interest in this, and it's just absolutely staring at us in the face, is that there is a whole load of these types of people about. Now, they're called incels. Everything has to have a title now. That's the grouping, that's the community. They're online, they're getting hits, they've got a bloke who committed terrible murder and atrocity.
Continue on M4 for 5 miles.
This bloke who did the shooting in Plymouth, this murderer who took his own life, there's like online shrines to this bloke already. We'll go into more about incels, but let me be very frank as I speak to Joe Hemmings and say I think there's a whole ton of people around here, young, white, disenfranchised, self-loathing men whose physicality is a great disappointment to them, and who they think that women are terrible because they haven't got they're not getting the sex that they want. If we're outlining what we're actually seeing in the real world and this bloke, how big a jump is it from the people that you see to actions like that? I hope it's a long jump, but I fear it is not. Joe, good morning.
Good morning, Andrew.
How many of these guys are around?
Well, there are lots of forums around there. The biggest one I think has 13,000 active members and 200,000 threads. I mean, what you've got to bear in mind with incel, which I think is a word that a lot of people haven't even come across before, that it started off, it's short for involuntary celibate, and it started off as a group of people who were comforting and supporting each other, men who were lonely and didn't have relationships. In a very short time, in 20-25 years, it has turned into something quite different. It has turned into something where these guys are hugely misogynistic, they have an unfulfilled sense of entitlement to sex, they start to hate women, they start to advocate violence against women. People are calling it a terrorist organisation. Actually, it's a tribal organisation. It's for all those outcasts that felt they were too unattractive to find a relationship, to get together and feel, well, we're not alone, and what are we going to do about it? And it's literally got this hideous grip on the mental health of the people who may have joined it simply for some support, who find others who are much more radical than they are, and they are being drawn into this terrible, dark, black place.
Look, men who are increasingly self-aware, physically aware, vain, having implants for pecs, implants for their calves, working on their body like he did, then posting videos, as well as the hate that you talk about, and the willingness to broadcast it. You know, the life of men, the public life, the online life of men in certain groups like this has changed. There have always been sad, loner, loser, whatever you want to call them, and he is all of that. There have always been those people about, but now they've got support online, and they're finding each other. I think that's a threat.
It's a huge threat. There is something they call the black pill. They encourage their followers to take it. That is basically accepting your lot in life. You are not going to have a woman to have a relationship with, and therefore you are encouraged to hate on not only the women that won't look at you, but to hate on the men who are having relationships. And it gets very angry. There's lots of grievances. There's violent rhetoric. And yes, it's a very short and slippery path, I'm afraid, to the level of despair and encouragement.
In 2 miles, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
This guy,
yes,
the first generation who were born with the internet around and absolutely present, and it's just one big experiment, isn't it?
It's huge cognitive distortion, and of course they can be out there getting all the likes on YouTube. Again, you know, some of these social media platforms have to take responsibility for seeing some of the stuff that's put out there, and yet letting it go out there, letting it be liked, letting it be spread. This is all fuel to angry, despairing people who have been drawn into a huge group. There's a huge group of these people out there.
Look, there's always been a whole load of men who have got a problem with women who are not giving them sex or relationships or comfort or whatever it is. No, well, you say it is, but I've been a man all my life, and I've known men who, you know, especially probably from 15, 16, 17, have had, you know, let's be honest, a very peculiar and sort of a one-track mind when it comes to thinking about women. Tipping over into real world of violence may be a big step, but my fear is that it's not such a big step if you're being encouraged to do it online.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, most of them have had, you know, poor relationships with women, with mothers and sisters growing up. You know, this particular guy, Jake Davison, was watching porn from the age of 11. I mean, if you look and start breaking down his sort of lifestyle, and he felt that he's autistic, he's on the spectrum, he felt an outcast.
Well, we don't know whether that's the case, do we?
Well, apparently, allegedly it's the case, but if he felt some sort of different to other people, he felt an outcast.
In a 1/4 mile, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
If you're on your side, go out and do something about it. We cannot tolerate this any longer. You can understand, to a degree, a trigger and a gun license. I mean, using that word sort of metaphorically and literally is...
Exit at junction 3.
Good to speak with you, Joe Hemmings, a behavioural psychologist. 7:17 is the time. Simon in Essex. Andrew, when describing these incels, why do you narrow it down to white males?
In a 1/4 mile, at Cranford Parkway interchange, take the 3rd exit onto the Parkway, A312.
How specific do you want to get? If there's 3 black guys and 4,000, what do you want? The white underclass in this country, and white working class males, of which this was one, this is where we are fermenting problems. Educationally subnormal, devouring porn, disliking women to the point where you'd commit online hate crimes, which I would consider these, and then going out and shooting people, not just women. No, I think I know who this group are, and you bet it's a threat. The news with Thomas Watson.
The Taliban have made further territorial gains as they edge towards the Afghan capital, Kabul. At least 304 people are now known to have died after a powerful earthquake hit Haiti. All 16 and 17-year-olds in England are to be offered their first coronavirus vaccine over the next week. The weather mostly dry with some sunny spells, showers in northern Scotland and a high 23 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Louise Cookie. The M4 is closed in both directions.
Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway.
Junction 6 for Windsor and Junction 5 for Langley. In Regent's Park, St Mark's Square is blocked westbound because of an accident approaching Princess Road. And in
Continue on the Parkway for 1 mile.
The water main has burst. That's just before the A2. On the tubes, there are severe delays on the Central Line, also on the Northern and Piccadilly lines. That's between Acton Town and Heathrow Airport, with minor delays on the rest of the line. It's because of train cancellations.
This is LBC.
Hey Harry, hello mate. Any tips for the horses? It's going to be one hell of a race, that's for sure. Oh sorry mate, I've got Michael Owen on the line. Here Michael. Hello Gaffer. What do you fancy in the big race today?
Oh, I think the favourite will win it by a distance.
I'm not sure he'd handle these conditions. I like the one at the bottom of the handicap. Your best bet is... Oh sorry lads, I've got to run. I'm teeing off in 20.
Whether you listen to Harry or Michael, make your best bet at BetVictor. Search online for latest offers. 18 plus, be gamble aware. Please gamble responsibly. Smartphones, smart speakers, smart cars, everything's getting smarter these days. Except me, of course. I had an eye test at Specsavers and they offered me this new scan called OCT. Now that thing is smart. It's their most advanced eye exam ever and could help monitor your eye health and detect certain eye conditions up to 4 years earlier. Pretty good for a quick scan, eh?
Book an eye test with an OCT scan at specsavers.co.uk. Available nationwide. Charge applies.
Would your dog like peace of mind from Pets in a Pickle Pet Insurance? That's a yes from him. Visit petsinApickle.co.uk.
It's time to start thinking about swapping your lounge for your lounger and spoil yourself rotten. And that's something...
In a quarter of a mile, at Wagoners Roundabout, take the second exit and stay on the Parkway, A312.
Boutique is indulging in fine specialty dining in one of our restaurants. It's relaxing in the knowledge that travel insurance and cancellation cover for coronavirus is of course included. Go on, spoil yourself. Sail away this August aboard a newly released UK cruise. Search Saga Boutique Cruises.
Travel insurance provided by Great Lakes SE. Cancellation cover provided by Saga. Subject to medical screening. Opt-out option available. Over 50s only. T's and C's apply.
You coming?
It's gonna be good.
Come on, mate. Come on, let's go.
Don't miss out on your two...
Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway.
Good times.
Continue on A312 for 1.5 miles.
Have already had their first COVID jab. It's easy and there's plenty of ways to get yours done quickly. Visit nhs.uk/COVID vaccination to book yours now or to find your nearest walk-in centre. Go on then, don't miss out.
Andrew Castle on LBC.
7:21 is the time. We'll go to Kabul in Afghanistan in just a second. The withdrawal of our troops, US troops, foreign troops, advisors, it's ongoing. Paratroopers are over there helping the British to evacuate 20 years after going in there in the first place. I thought it was to stop terrorism, to build up the Afghan army. GP might have come across somebody. If somebody's on, heavy medication and has got a history of poor mental health, then okay, fine, we need that as well. But at least go online. If this guy's ranting and raving and describing himself in the terms that he did, and describing women in the way that he did, and the world in the way that he did, don't give him a gun. God almighty. 84850. 7:23 is the time. The Taliban now control all key cities in Afghanistan except Kabul. Mohammed Hades is a journalist based in Kabul. Mohammed, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Tell me what it feels like to be in Kabul at the moment.
Yeah, the situation, unfortunate, is chaotic.